Today we're taking a look at a new bind and fly quad from SpeedyBee, and it is called the Master 5. This is based off their Master 5 frame that we saw a few months ago. However, it isn't identical. There have been some tweaks and changes to improve its overall durability. They've improved how you're able to mount the O3 ear unit now, and overall what SpeedyBee are delivering here is an all-in-one bind and fly package for people who don't want to build a quad themselves, with all of the nice features that we've come to expect from SpeedyBee, including their wireless connectivity. Now, just to be clear up front, SpeedyBee did send me this drone for free. However, they have not seen this video before it's been published. I've not been paid to make this video, and as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Now, before we get started, I probably should just explain what a bind and fly quad actually is for those who don't know. It is basically an off-the-shelf, ready-to-fly FPV drone. It comes pre-built, it has a receiver built in, it has a video transmitter built in, and all you need to do is bring your own FPV goggles and your own remote controller. Now, this quad is available in multiple versions. It's available in analog or digital based on the DJI O3 system, and it's also available in multiple different RC types as well, and the one I've got here is the Express LRS edition. Okay, so to start, we're going to do an unboxing. I have opened this at this point, but I haven't actually done anything else. As you can see, it was shipped to me in its outside packaging with the stickers and tape all over it, so I can't show you a nice shiny box. This is how it arrived to me. Now, as I mentioned, this is a bind and fly from SpeedyBee based on their Master 5 DC, but it has some tweaks and changes. Now, the version they have sent me here is the O3 version with Express LRS. Now, when you get it, it comes in this nice box, which is fairly solid. You've got the foam packaging to hold everything in place. Now, in the box, we obviously have the drone itself. We'll lift that out, and we'll take a closer look at the quad itself in a minute. We then have a bunch of accessories. We've got a GoPro mount, which is nice, which they've included, 3D printed. We've got some straps. They're not the super grippy. Actually, they are the grippy straps. They're not the super sticky ones, but they do look like they are grippy. We have some additional accessories. We have an Allen key, a front protection piece. We've got some additional spare screws, which is nice to see. We've got some more cable protectors, which is interesting for the arms. We've then got a wiring harness. Not sure what that one's for. And then we've got our props, and the props they're including are the Gemfan Hurricanes, which are the 51466 version 2s. Also in the box, I should mention, you get this quick start guide. This is actually quite nicely done. It's got everything laid out on it about the settings for the quad, so the different receiver types, the different video transmitter types, and it's all laid out in both English and Chinese as well, just to get you up and running nice and easily. Jumping in closer to the quad itself. Now, it's based on their SpeedyBee flight frame, which we had recently, which is the Master. However, it is modified, and it isn't exactly the same as that standalone frame I showed you on the channel. Now, the model, as I've said, they've sent me is the O3 edition with Express LRS. So we've got an O3 ear unit at the back, and we've got the O3 camera up front. And they do say that they've optimized the frame without having to need now a longer cable if you're going to use it with O3. It is fitted with the SpeedyBee F7 version 3 stack, so that is the F7 BL3250 amp, and it also has motors from Emax, which are the Emax Eco 2 series, which are the 2306s. The frame has been designed in such a way that it does not have props in view for the O3 camera, which means you're going to be able to use it for filming. It has that improved heat dissipation because it has that built-in heatsink in the bottom of the frame down there, and that is what is attached to the bottom of the DJI ear unit, and that is helping remove the heat from the O3 in use. It's got the same vibration structure that we saw on the original Master frame. So you can see that large area down there underneath, which is made of silicone, but there's now LEDs embedded into that as well. And there's also side plates on the frame down here with LEDs embedded into, protecting the flight stack around the sides. The quad comes with TPU pieces fitted all over, so we've got them on the back, which is our GPS and antenna mount. If I flip it over, we've then got protection on the bottom of each arm, and they include a piece that will bolt to the frame up front, and there's also a protection pad added on the bottom of the frame as well for landing. The ELRS receiver is also housed in some TPU at the back here. You can see it just down there, and that then is going to stop it flapping around, but it also makes access a little bit easier as well. And the antenna for that is located down here at the back under that GPS mount. There is also a buzzer fitted down here, as well as the capacitor, again mounted in TPU. And if we have a look at the O3 camera at the front, this time it appears to be in TPU brackets on either side, mounted off the main aluminium front structure. Now, one of the original complaints on the original Master 5 frame that you could buy was the front end and the lack of support in the event of a crash if you hit it like that, because the way SpeedyBee had it set up was this sort of cantilever setup with one screw at the bottom, a couple of screws on the top plate, but there was nothing stopping that front end twisting over. However, on the new Master 5 Bind and Fly, SpeedyBee have actually addressed this, and they've added additional support at the back section of this mount, which now will stop that front end twisting in, and it should increase the overall front end strength massively. Now, at the heart of this build, as I mentioned, is the SpeedyBee F7 version 3, and because it is using that flight stack, it comes with all the benefits that has, including their wireless configuration, onboard 500 megs of black box storage, the LED controls, as well as that built-in battery indicator that's located down here as well. There is a USB-C port on this quad for configuration down here, but that is actually hidden behind these covers on the side, and they do appear to be actually screwed in place, so you would need a screwdriver to be able to get to them as far as I can see. SpeedyBee, though, are really pushing you to do the configuration on this wirelessly with the SpeedyBee app, and we'll take a look at that a little bit more later on in the video. Overall, looking at the build, I think SpeedyBee have done a nice job of putting this Bind and Fly together. Everything looks quite tidy inside. There's no cables hanging out. There's nothing there I'm particularly concerned about. We've got our XT60 coming out of this large hole here in the middle. I would have liked to have seen a bit more protection around that, but overall it isn't too bad. And there's nicely laid out stickers and labels all over it. So for instance, the little discs on top of the props giving us the direction. We've got these stickers at the back here telling us about the O3 air unit, where to bind it, and overall everything's there labeled for new users to be able to find what they need, and if they follow the instructions they should be okay. Now, Bind and Flies have got a lot more popular over the last 12 months, whether it be for people who are new to FPV or people who just don't want to build their own aircraft. And the real nice thing, as I've said, is you only need to bring your own remote controller. The remote of choice that I use is the Radio Master Boxer. And as I've said, this is the O3 edition of the quad, and I'm going to be using it with the DJI goggles too, but it is also compatible with the DJI goggles Integra as well, and the DJI goggles version 2 via that O3 update. Now, out the box, this quad does come preset up ready to go with the SpeedyBee tune installed. However, there are always some little tweaks and changes that I like to make on my quads, simply just making sure the switches do what I expect them to do, where and when. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this quad has all of the wireless configuration that we've come to expect from SpeedyBee, and whilst you do have that USB port on the side, SpeedyBee recommend that you do any configuration via their SpeedyBee app. This allows you to do pretty much everything that you need to do in Betaflight, such as the main configuration, the PID tuning, the RC setup, and everything else. And this is by far the best way of getting this quad up and running, but you do have access to that USB port on the side if you want to. Now, when I received mine, it didn't have the latest firmware on board for the Express LRS receiver, so I did end up updating that, and I also ended up having to update the firmware for the O3 air unit as well. However, I did not touch the version of Betaflight that this quad came with. I do not recommend that you upgrade any new Bind and Fly to the latest versions of Betaflight. You are far better just flying them as they come. That way you're going to stay away from any potential problems you may have by accidentally overwriting the settings, because it isn't always known that if you update Betaflight, it will not save the standard configuration that the manufacturer has installed on the quad. It will erase everything, and then you will be left with a drone with no pre-configuration, and you would then need to speak to the manufacturer to get their presets, and it just causes a whole world of problems. So my advice is, do not update. As I mentioned earlier, one of the nice features of this being a SpeedyBee quad is that it has all of that wireless configuration built in as standard. Now, when you first get this and connect it to the app, it actually walks you through a really nice, simple setup process, allowing you to configure the receiver, allowing you to configure the VTX, and SpeedyBee have done a fantastic job of making setup as simple as possible with their SpeedyBee app. Now, I'm not going to walk you through that bit in this video, but I am going to show you some of the basic configuration that you can do with the SpeedyBee app. It's available for both Android and iOS. Now, I'm going to power the quad up to do this. I've got the props installed, but for safety, I'm going to use this, which is a short saver. Whenever you power the quad up on the bench, you should either remove the props or have something like this installed. This will limit the current that is available to the quad, and this will prevent it actually taking off in the event of it arming accidentally. That isn't something that should ever happen, but you should always take precaution whenever you're working with a quad very close to your body. Now we're going to power up. We're going to then let everything connect. We're then going to click the start tuning button, and it will then connect to the SpeedyBee app on my phone. And once it does that, it will show us on the screen the aircraft. So if I move the aircraft, you can see that is now moving on the screen there. And we have all of the usual configuration options in Betaflight available via the SpeedyBee app. So we've got our initial setup, and it's given us some information down here, such as arming disabled flags, battery voltage, current draw, and GPS status if we had a GPS installed. We go down, we have the ports options. So this allows us to configure the main ports. We've got then our configuration screen. So this would allow us to do the configuration. There's nothing here you should really need to change. This quad will come pre-configured out the box, but you can change them there if you want to. You've got the battery screen if you want to adjust that. You've got the fail-safe settings. We've got then the presets option, the PID tuning menu. So here you can go in and adjust the PIDs, and you've also got the sliders down there as well, just like you have usually on Betaflight. We've then got our remote setup. So for instance, if I just reach over and move the throttle, you can see that's moving there on the screen. And I'm not going to say you can do absolutely everything, but you have all of the main tuning. And the real nice thing about this is you can not only do this here on the bench, but you can do this quickly and easily out in the field. Next, I want to share with you some footage from this quad. Now, it arrived literally the day I was heading off on holiday, and whilst this was meant to be me spending time with the family, I did manage to squeeze in a few flights. Now, there is a mixed bag of footage here. There is some footage with an ND on board, although I made a little bit of a mistake and I forgot to lock the ISO. I actually thought I'd locked the ISO and I hadn't, and as a result of that, some of it doesn't look particularly great because it had shifted up. But I then did some flights without the NDs on board, luckily, which I'm going to show you as well. But obviously, as a result of the very, very good weather I've had here, when I'm flying without ND filters in that situation, you're going to see some jello. But the idea of this footage more than anything is to give you an idea of the kind of output that you can get from this quad. Okay, so to share with you some thoughts on the Master 5 HD Bind and Fly from SpeedyBee. Now, with regards to the quad itself, I actually think this is very, very nice. I like the way it feels out the box. The rates aren't particularly high, but the tune is good on it, especially for cinematic 03 style flying. It certainly isn't tuned like a Bando Basher or anything like that, but I think SpeedyBee have done a nice job of picking a tune with balance for new users, but also being able to get some nice cinematic footage. For me, literally about the only changes I would make to it is a little bit more on the rates, and it is absolutely spot on. I do like what SpeedyBee have done here on the frame. It's nice to see that they have improved that design on the Master 5 as well. I'm less concerned now about that front end, whereas before it did have that possibility of twisting in, but with that extra support now, it's not going to be a problem. And I think they really have delivered a very nice, compelling bind and fly option for people who don't want to build a quad themselves. Now, with regards to the footage output of this quad, well, really, we know what 03 can do, so it then comes down to the camera mounting. As you saw in some of my footage, I didn't lock the ISO on the ND, which ruined that early footage, and then when I flew without the NDs later, you are getting a bit of jello. I think the TPU mounts would be better silicon, in my opinion, but it isn't a dramatic issue, and we are seeing vibrations on many 03 style quads at the moment. This camera is particularly difficult to tune right. The only thing I think I would say though is I think it would be better with silicon mounts, but even quads with silicon mounts are still seeing some vibrations creeping through, especially in very, very bright conditions like I was in today. Really, there is nothing though that I can complain about really that SpeedyBee have done here. I think the changes they've made to the frame are good, and they've put together a very compelling option if you're looking to get yourself a bind and fly quad. Now, there are multiple different versions of this quad available, and depending which one you choose will depend on the price. For instance, it's going to be available in both analog and DJI 03 digital, and it's going to be available in multiple receiver options as well. The version I've got here, which is the Bind and Fly ELRS version, is $599 in the 03 version, and is going to be $319 in analog. In TBS Nano, it's available in Bind and Fly for $609 with 03 and $335 in the analog version, and there is a plug and play version available, which is going to be $579 in 03 and $299 in the plug and play analog version. Now, obviously, there is a dramatic price difference between the analog and the digital versions, but that is simply due to the cost of the 03 air unit. Take into account 03 is somewhere between $210 and $230 for the air unit itself, and whilst it does seem like many of these bind and flies are expensive, that is largely because of the digital versions having that DJI 03 air unit on board, and when you price up the components on these, you're really not actually paying that much more for buying a drone in its parts and putting it together yourself compared to the off-the-shelf model. So in the end, I think this is a very, very nice bind and fly quad, and if you're interested in getting one, there will be a link to it in the description. I want to say a massive thank you to SpeedyBee for sending this one over to me. I think they've done a really good job here, and it's nice to see SpeedyBee enter that bind and fly market. We are seeing so many companies deliver really good off-the-shelf quads now, and whilst many of these may not be designed to be out-and-out Bando Bashers, if you're someone who wants to get into cinematic FPV, these are absolutely worth a look, and as I've said, if you want to get one, there will be a link to it in the description. Furthermore, if you have found this video interesting, please do let me know what you think in the comment section. If you have any questions, put them in there as well, and I will try and answer them. And if you'd like to support the channel to allow us to keep making content like this in the future, please do consider checking out the link to my Patreon. It's only through the support of my patrons on this channel I'm able to keep making content like you've seen here today. Whilst we do receive products from manufacturers like this quad from SpeedyBee, that doesn't mean we buy everything, and I'm only able to continue to buy things like the DJI FPV system, the 03 system, or the Avatar system, and share with you my thoughts through the support of my Patreons. And I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who already has supported me for everything you've done, because we would not be able to do it without your support. And if you'd like to support us moving forward, please do consider checking it out. Anyway, that's it from me on this one. Stay safe. I'll speak to you soon.